Okay, good early morning, peoples. What a day Monday was. All I gotta say is wow. So BTC and gold are on fire, and silver, and it's pretty exciting. All the alternative methods to fiat money. So that's driving some of our favorite stocks. Coney, I did a report on that. MSTY is in better situation. So let's dive into MSTY. What happened yesterday? So MSTR continues to surge per my inverse head and shoulders. It was up almost 9%. Can't get much closer, 8.99. And we were up a wonderful 8.47. When you're capped, you might be up 1 or 2%, or partially capped, maybe 4%. So we, through the fortunate good of having an IB, number one, a high IB, and number two, the fund manager wasn't too greedy, we're able to write our calls, weekly calls, out at 1800, right? So sorry, 1830. So we moved up quite a bit to 1727, right? So that means our synthetic is just roaring because that's a 1540 synthetic. So no trades, no further trades from other than Friday of last week. Share count, this should be 4275. I was doing something with Ybit and overwrote this. Okay, so not enough added shares to create them to put on any additional trades, buy synthetics, or add more calls. So let's look at how we're doing here. And you might say to yourself, I find it interesting because I do Coney and I do MSTY so often, and I own both, and I watch the share counts, and clearly Coney has a longer track record, and people understand it better, and more people flock to it from an ownership, and again, it has consistent. But I could have told you with that inverse head and shoulders that it was going to way outperform, and more or less did. Of course, the fund managers had to have very aggressive targets out there, so we didn't run by them. But that's exactly what happened, right? We still might run by them, but there's not much damage done, and we'll have made so much money on the synthetic by that point. So, and maybe it comes down to price. You know, MSTY's 29, 30, 31. Now it's 35 again, right? And, what was the MSTY? Yeah, 35.22. So I'm not sure why people don't go to it. You know, if you love BTC, then Michael Saylor is sort of the spokesperson for it. He's the CEO. And, you know, Coinbase is popular, but it's been held back because of feared competition from the CME, and they're going to take over and do a lot of the exchange volume, yada, yada, yada. Well, Coin sort of woke up, right? And we are breaking out big time overnight on BTC. So let me start with that. We have been, but once we got up into the 66 range and 67, look at, we had a flag run up, right? A topping candle ran clear up to 72,360. And then this is a perfect flag again, right? Flag wants to wave until the flag breaks down or breaks up, and almost all flags, when they're on a pole like that, break up. So things look pretty positive. Once we're through 73 and BTC, it's off to the races. It might have touched 74 at one point. Let's look at a 6-month chart. Yeah, 74, 415, right? Here's another topping candle at 73. So once we break this, if in fact we do, then I think we're on the way to 93 to 104. Now, this could be a false breakout. We could run up here and hit resistance and come back and consolidate for a month or 6 weeks and then break out, right? And then you sort of end up with a cup and a handle, right? Although it'd be a little bit lopsided cup. But this clearly was an inverse head and shoulders, and that measures just on this one. If you look here, that's 67. This is 57. That says we should run to 77. So there's all kinds of things in place here that look like BTC is going to run. And MicroStrategy as a company, one thing they're known for, their corporate treasuries own more Bitcoin, BTC, than any other entity in the world, right? More than countries, more than other. I mean, Coinbase is like the 7th or 8th largest holder of Bitcoin themselves, Coinbase. So I think Coinbase is woke up and running. The problem there, if you saw my other video, they're super capped, right? They're just destroyed. So all their synthetic wealth is being offset by all their losses. Well, we're not in that situation. So let me go move this thing out of the way, okay, and show you what's really happening here in this scenario. So we see those. Let's go over to our weekly, all right? So we've got, I'll go into the chart in a minute because I updated. We fortunately, through our fund managers, wrote in 1830, right? So that was quite a bit out there when they put this on, right? Because we were probably high 15s when they wrote it. And then, and they got decent money, $24, $25. Well, now we're at 1727, right? And so I could see easily this week being 1830, but as long as we stay below 1830, we keep this 2.3 million, and quite honestly, we could go to 1855, I think, because we got to 25 before we have to give the 2.3 back. But do you know what that would do if we ran to that in our synthetic? We're already up 18 million. Okay, now again, it's paper gain, but they can take that in multiple ways. So we've got an $18 million paper gain, okay, and that's going to climb more here, right? This is going to get, the higher we go, right, there's some time premium because not the 719, but if we go to 1830, that's probably going to give us 80 more, right? And if we put 80 more on that and we shrink this by 40 or 50, you know, I can only imagine what those numbers. Okay, let's do that. 471, and let's make this, you know, 153. It needs to be a minus. So we're at 29 million, right? And we still haven't been hurt really by that situation. So let's carry that over to our payments tab, because that's what you guys care about with no trades and everything else. Share count's the same. So we're sitting there with $4.28, right? Just to remind you. So on the 719, it went from a $4.7 million gain to an $18 million gain. Again, on paper, right? We've already collected 35 million. So when we look at that, but the problem has been when we got killed on that 1280, well, we're not going to get killed on the 1830 because even if we did, we'd make so much more in the synthetic because we had a lot of room to run. Okay, so I see this not hurting us as much because I think we could easily get this to $6. So then they pay us $2.50, $3 out of the $6 over here. I don't know if we can whittle this down. We probably won't this week. I mean, because we've already counted the 2.8 million, right? So, but if we lost that, I could see them rolling out of the 1540 into a higher strike price, and then they could just collect, you know, a portion of this money. Even if it's, you know, I don't remember the exact numbers. I'll fix this back up. Minus 193, something, yeah, well, I'm close enough, right? So, and picking up some of that 18 million, because if you look on our payments tab, that's half. 18 is a little more than half. So that's going to kick that up $2.14, right? That's going to make that 640 that we've won in our synthetic. And so there's room to pay us some money, even though we don't have it in the short call. And maybe they're going to get us where we can get some short call. We'll see. You know, a lot of it depends on what the Bitcoin chart tells us. Let's take a look at MicroStrategy so you can see that in action, right? Whoops. So here's our MicroStrategy chart. And that was the one that was signaling, look at that in after hours, right? We came along here, and so it's up, right? I mean, this thing is just, you know, waiting to pounce on 1800. And let's hope it stops at that point for right now, for the sake of our weekly. But honestly, our synthetic is just killing it. So I feel pretty good about that. I can see this thing running up to $38, $39, $40 on MSTY. Again, we may not get a huge payout, but you guys care about both, right? Nobody likes to see your NAV. If you bought this thing at $33 and it goes down to $28, you're not happy. Of course, $4 payments. I mean, in my situation, my average price is 25, something like that, 24. So you have to buy. I bought some more the other day at 30. Only because I saw that inverse head and shoulders, right? Now, I know this thing is going back. It didn't surprise me that it got to 35. I added some Coney, but if you saw my video, I'm saying go buy some Conal, right? 2 times Coinbase, because we're capped, you know, this week. And you may get $1 payout on Coney. It's still awesome, guys. 12 times $1 is $12, right? On a $22 stock, you're getting 60 or 70% return on your money. Don't worry about, oh, I bought it at 24 and it's only 22. You know, what's that? That's less than 10%. So don't expect to get 100% appreciation in these stocks and get 80 or 90%. It's just not probable. It may happen in a month. I remember buying, you know, some MSTY at 21, and the next thing I knew it was at 45, and they were getting ready to pay a $4 out, and I'm like, wow. But I kind of knew it was vulnerable to going back, but it's a lot easier to take it when you're in the low 20s, right? So the thing I showed the people about Coney, understand, I'm trying to find a MSTR. If anybody knows one, send it to me in the comments. Sometimes I search wrong or it's not as easy to find. I know there's a 3 times bearish on MSTR ETF out there, but I don't think I know of just an MSTR that's 2 times. Of course, you can go long BTC or you can do something like that. So anyway, I'll go through and I'll give you some of the standard other kind of things in here, right? Again, this is where we stand. We got a long time to run with this guy. We've talked about the payments. You know, I mean, right now as it stands, I see, you know, a couple bucks. But I think if we secure this money like we have, and even if we lose this 2 million and we have to take it away and there's only, you know, this goes up to a higher number like 420 or something, I think we'll pull some synthetic money off and this will be six bucks. So I think we're safe to get a $2 payout. And who pays $2 consistently? Nobody. This has been a 412 and a 252 payment on the first 2. So right there, for anybody that's been in the game, I've collected $670, right? If I get a $2 payment, it's almost $9, right? When you buy the stock in the low 20s, that means I own the stock at like $11. So you just have to work these stocks and ask me questions which way I see it going, because the charts tell me a lot when I watch them, right? And I'm hoping that Coney can fix itself. I'm going to do a YBIT. YBIT's looking pretty good. It's a little bit capped with its calls. But again, I think BTC runs, right? All right, I hope this helps you guys. So I'll sign out. Well, let me see if I owe you guys a couple little. I just feel nuanced to make sure I cover everything. So nothing in the share account, nothing really in the accounting side. Oh, let me show you the weekly, better in the holdings. So this is what, even though we're capped, we're not capped. But here's an interesting thing, and this will help you guys learn about these calls. So we write the call a couple days ago, and we got like 25 bucks, right? But we were way down at like 15.70, right? So we wrote it out, and we still got, because of the time premium, guys, this only has 4 trading days, right? So they've got it more and more because, MSTR is running. It's run to 17 something, 17.27. So that went from 25 to 46. So we got paid 2.3. But if you look at it, if we had to buy it back today, it would cost us 4.2 million, right? But we're a winner by 18 million over on our synthetic. But just so you know, so as long as it stays below 1830, this goes to zero. If it goes right at 1830, we buy this back for, 1 cent, 2 cents, 3 cents on Friday the 24th. But if it goes to 1850, it's going to cost us 20 bucks. Well, we got 25, right? It's only when it gets up to 1850, 1890, 1900 that it starts adding up, but it still isn't going to knock this down that much. But that's why these are, sometimes when they go on the last day negative, you're really worried. But I'm not really too worried about this, right? Because it can still go $100, and on Friday at the end of the day, if it's only up $100, which would be 1827, we keep the 2.3 million. So that's how these things work. Again, options have 2 components: time and price. Okay? So in an option, depends on what your strike price and how far out it is, right? So the time component is the reason they refer to it is it has decay, right? If you wrote something out 30 days, well, in this case, these weeklies, they're written 5 days out, right? So let's say you're right at the money. You pick 1500, okay? And you're right at 1500 in MSTR. And let's say they say, okay, time premium's 18 bucks, right? So the next day, if you stay at 1500, the time premium probably shrinks to $15, right? And then the third day, it probably goes down to 12, and like that. And then it probably drops more aggressively to 7, something like that. And so that's just based on time, assuming that the price just absolutely stayed the same. But when you pay these big premiums, like we got $25, and we were at 15, I'm making this up kind of, 1557, and we wrote in 1830. Thought, oh, we're pretty safe with 1830, we'll take the 25. Well, when that underlying stock starts running, right, and now all of a sudden it runs to 1727, then that 25 becomes 46. Well, it's still not 1830, right? Imagine if it was above 1830. Then it would be that price, which would be the strike price or the price plus the time remaining. So anyway, just always trying to teach a little bit and let some of the concepts, fall in there with how these options actually work. And then we've got to get a smart fund manager, because I was talking in the Coney one, sometimes they focus, they're looking and they're saying, well, okay, the IV on MSTR is, 102. What is our 111? Okay, 111% of a $35 stock, we've got to return, X amount. And what does that break down into a week? Well, we need 2.4% yield. That means we need to make, 97 cents. Well, in order to make 97 cents, I got to write this volume of calls at $4 or $8 or whatever. They're doing all these calculations down in the weeds, and sometimes I don't think they look up at the charts because they have the intellect and the access to the algorithms to understand it. But again, they're revenue driven. They're this is a fund to pay out a dividend. And sometimes the risk that they take to lower the strike price to get that money in the door and more money, they want to lower strike price. Well, when this stuff starts to run aggressively, they risk getting capped. What I think they ought to do, and I just realized this after doing this for a while, they should buy a protective call. When they're, now they wrote in 1830, to me that's a massively protective call because it was way up there. It doesn't mean it won't get there, because it might get there, but their synthetic will make it. Maybe they buy a 2,000 sometimes for $3, and they just buy a small amount of them, and in case this thing flies, they lose on most of their weeklies, but they make a bunch. So there's some room for even a fine-tuning here. I think I'll mention it to the Zega people. So anyway, hopefully that helps you guys. I know some of you told me you're starting to understand the dynamics of the synthetics and the referred to as covered calls, but technically they're not covered. They just use that term because a true covered is when you own the underlying stock, and they don't own the underlying stock. Okay, guys, gotta go. Bruce out. Again, not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Fun and entertainment. Hope you were entertained. Okay, bye. See ya.